About a month ago, I made a video on what I thought was gaming's greatest comeback, Cyberpunk 2077. But in this video, I'm going to kind of continue this mini-series, and I'm going to look at another game which I think has had one of gaming's greatest comebacks, and that game is one of my personal favourites. It's Sea of Thieves. Now, Sea of Thieves was announced at E3 2015 almost a decade ago, and it's safe to say the game had a considerable amount of hype. The game was nominated for numerous awards before it was released and even won the Best Xbox One game and Best Multiplayer game at Gamescom 2016. The game had a lot of hype, and this hype continued to build up the entire way until its release on the 20th of March 2018. Now, I was one of the people on the front lines 7 years ago when this game released. I got it in the first week of its release. And I must say, the game actually was exceptionally fun. That's one thing I think people do forget. The start of the game was really fun. And if you read reviews from that time and you read player feedback, people admitted, yeah, this game is really fun, especially with friends. The whole kind of beauty of this game was playing with, one or three friends, effectively, 1 to 3 friends, and having a lot of fun with the game, just messing about. This kind of honeymoon period lasted for the first couple of weeks before people realised the game was getting a little boring. Effectively, all you were doing, a lot of my viewers are probably used to just getting absolutely handed treasure nowadays in Sea of Thieves, and there's so many ways to earn. But back in my day, what we had to do was grind the absolute hell out of things. Forts were probably the best way to get all of your loot in one, but they were grindy as hell and took ages and offered a fraction of the rewards they do nowadays. Gold Hoarder and Order of Soul voyages were actually pretty similar to the voyages that currently exist today, although the rewards were much worse. I mean, you'd be getting a foul bounty skull or a disgraced bounty skull for a lot of work for an Order of Souls voyage going between island to island. Your reputation was not very good. And Merchant was by far the worst. I mean, Merchant, you had to absolutely grind voyages, and these voyages would consist of moving chickens, snakes, and pigs around, going to one island and bringing them back, and making sure they didn't die of hunger or didn't die, by you killing a snake, because they were very annoying, I must admit. It was an absolute slog, and people did seem to understand this, and it started to annoy people. Now, luckily, Rare managed to react kind of quickly, and they released The Hungering Deep in May. But for 2 months, the game wasn't on the best of reputation. The Hungering Deep released, and it released for Megalodon, which obviously has played a bigger part in the game in the future, but at this point, it was just a very, very fun event. You had to hunt one Megalodon, effectively, with 5 people on your ship playing a song, which means you had to team up with another crew. This was obviously quite tough because there were no alliances at this point. So, yeah, the game was pretty bare bones when it released. But this update kind of did revive the game a little bit, although the next few updates of Skeleton Thrones and Gunpowder Skeletons were not particularly massive. I mean, they were fun to play at the time, but they didn't really help kind of ease the tensions that were being created in the community. And similarly, the Sunken Curse, which added ruby mermaid statues and obviously emerald and sapphire mermaid statues, again, did little to alleviate it. I mean, they were steps in the right direction, but they weren't massive ones, if you know what I'm trying to say. The game was very, very bare. It was compared at the time to kind of a Fallout 76, where the release was quite poor, and it also was compared to a No Man's Sky. Both of those games as well have had big comebacks in the last few years, which I think is very, very interesting to see as well. Now, popularity certainly was beginning to kind of decrease in this game. The player count definitely wasn't where it used to be at the start of the game, where the hype was absolutely massive, and people were losing faith. Rare could have maybe abandoned this, or really not updated it as much as they have, but instead they decided to completely slog it out. They released the Curse Sails in July of 2018, which added skeleton ships. Now, there is a theme in this video, and in the updates in general. The progress of Sea of Thieves has been very, very incremental. Megalodons, skeleton ships, skeleton thrones, mermaids, gunpowder skeletons, all of these were added within the first kind of 4 or 5 months of the game. And I think it is very, very interesting to see how the game really incrementally built up. Anyway, Cursed Sails was the start of the new Cursed Cruise update, which came in the end of August and September of 2018. Now, these added skeleton ships and were a really fun way to fight skeleton ships, a really fun new way to earn loot. But as I said, the game was very, very grindy. And something that really hadn't been addressed at that point was the pretty distinct lack of progression. So you could get to level 50, and once you got to level 50 in a faction, that was it, you were done. There was a hard limit, no more above that. And then there was a super grindy Athena's Fortune faction, which you get to level 20, I believe, at the time. Might have even been 10, but I think it was 20. Anyway, it was exceptionally grindy to get that up, and people really weren't interested. And what could you get if you decided to just grind gold? Well, you could buy cosmetics, and that was it. You could buy cosmetics and more cosmetics, and more cosmetics. Now, to be fair, it still is pretty similar, but there is a bigger range of cosmetics, and also the progression is not unlimited, but it is, well, vastly improved, and there's a lot more to progress. But anyway, the Cursed Scrooge update was more of the same, and the people were kind of still annoyed. Anyway, the Forsaken Shores released, and this released an entirely new region, which is obviously now the Devil's Roar. This was exceptionally fun. It added a whole new story to it, added new voyages, added new chests, added new loot type. This was an overhaul that completely revitalised the game, in my opinion. This was followed up very, very quickly by Festival of the Damned, a Christmas event, which was also followed up, well, to be fair, actually, going back, this was kind of a bit of a filler. You'll see it a lot nowadays. But anyway, I enjoyed it at the time. The next big update, and probably the game-changing update, was the Shrouded Spoils update. The Shrouded Spoils update added a ridiculous amount of things to the game. Not only did it add a multitude of new Megalodons, it actually added, I think, 4, because the Shrouded Ghost doesn't exist. But anyway, it also added Mist, which was in the game, which I'm sure was very, very cool. It updated Krakens, it made Krakens and Megalodon fights much more interesting. Skeleton ships were much more dangerous and much more interesting to fight. Also, skeleton forts were completely revitalized. They were much better after this update. And similarly, what it allowed you to do was finally add extra customization. So now you could upgrade your capstan, wheels, and cannons. I don't think you realized at the time how big this was, because before you could only upgrade your, well, not upgrade, you could add cosmetics to your hull, your sails, and the figurehead. That was it. So there was very little customization. As I said, the progression was just really, really not all that. And then Sea of Thieves added Mercenary Voyages and Reaper's Runs, which started the build rats again, incremental change. This was all right at the time, and it really was about 5 months, I believe, until they added another major update, which was the anniversary update. Now, the anniversary update, a year on effectively from release, is the update that I can say pretty truly changed Sea of Thieves. It was probably one of the 3 best updates that added to the game. They added, I mean, honestly, I could do an entire video on what they added in this update. They added the harpoon, that was a minor one. They updated ship damage, so you can actually have broken mast caps on the wheels. Again, the game was very, very bare bones at the start. I cannot reiterate this enough. You could only get holes in your ship. Your mast couldn't get taken down. There were no chain shots. Your wheel couldn't get damaged. Your anchor couldn't get damaged. It was probably easier for a solo sleeper to do well at this time. The main things, though, that this added was the arena, tall tales, and the hunter's call. So it finally added fishing, an update which had been requested for so long. It added pets, another thing, but it had been requested for so long. And fishing as well was super, super fun. Fishing and hunting really, in my opinion, was a very cool way to just kill time if you were bored. Tall tales, the best thing in the game, in my opinion. The story mode of Sea of Thieves, effectively, lore-driven content, 18, I believe, of them. There might be more, actually. There's tons. There probably is more. There's absolutely tons of Tall Tales to play now. I think it's about 25 now, probably. There's obviously the original 9, which were released in this. They were super fun. And the arena. Finally, what people have been asking for, a full PvP mode. Something that hadn't been in the game at all. A proper PvP mode, which really should be, because the game is kind of built on PvP and PvE, but obviously PvP has a very strong, passionate community, and so this kind of appeased them, and also was super, super fun. Anyway, after this update, Sea of Thieves went on an absolute roll. They added the Black Powder Stashes update, the Dark Relics update, the Smuggler's Fortune update, and the Fort of the Damned. Now, all of these updates added tons of new features into the game across the next kind of 6 months or so. You know, it added Reaper chests, it updated the lore, it added new pets, it added storage crates, it updated the black market, and I think released it, and it released the Pirate Emporium as well, which was obviously, I mean, I guess how you think of that. It also added new emotes. There was honestly added so many new things to the game. And then they added more Tall Tales. So they added the Seabound Soul. They built on the lore. They released the Festival of Giving, which introduced the Reaper's Hideout, which was again pretty revolutionary. They updated the lore again with Legend of the Sea, and then released an Ashen-focused update with the Cruise of Rage, which also added the Chest of Rage, Molten Sands Fortress improvement, and also allowed you to change your pirate, but again, that's pretty minimal. They released another Tall Tale in Heart of Fire, then Ships of Fortune, where they added the Forts of Fortune, they added Ships of Fortune, they updated the arena, which made it so much better, they added new pets, they updated Trading Company, they increased the ranks to 75 for trading companies, and they absolutely built on this and added so many new updates across 2019 and 2020. I mean, Haunted Shores added the Ghost Ships World event and added Ghost Ships and Ghost Hunts to it. Ashen Winds added the Ashen Winds World event. The Vault of the Ancients added vaults to the Gold Hoarders. Fate of the Damned was an update to the Fort of the Damned. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then they started doing seasons, which I don't even really want to talk about them. Seasons at the start were pretty good. I mean, it was basically just a renaming of updates. The first season, for example, added new merchant voyages, added a lot of voyages in general, actually, and it added new cosmetics. Season 2 added Forts of Fortune. Season 3 added the Pirates of the Caribbean Tall Tales, which were unbelievable. Season 4 added Siren Shrines and Treasuries, which were super, super cool as well. And then after that, it was kind of, the next updates can really all be classed into one. They added Sea Forts Captaincy. Captaincy was actually a massive update. I remember being so happy when that came out. They added the Guardians of Fortune and Servants of Flame in the Hourglass of Fates in 2022. And, I mean, I can probably ignore the rest of these updates because these are going into more of a modern time where they're adding guilds and updating Forts of Fortune and blah, blah, blah. What I'm trying to say is the amount of stuff Sea of Thieves have added to the game in that little history lesson I've just covered there, the amount of things they've added to the game is unbelievable over the last 7 years. They've been giving constantly... Every month they've been updating the game, giving little stuff, but every kind of 2 or 3 months they've been releasing major changes to the game, major changes to ways to play, and made the game so much better than it used to be. It is incredible if you compare the state of the game at the start compared to what it is now. There's new ways to progress and upgrade your ship. There's new ways to customize your ship, customize your character. There's new trading companies. There's new weapons. There's new abilities, like obviously harpoons. Genuinely, the amount of stuff, it is actually unbelievable how much they've pulled it back. And the player count has only continued to rise. Well, actually, no. Right now, it's not. It's been a bit of a slump right now, I would say. In the last year, it kind of has been a bit of a slump. But in general, they did bring it back. I mean, I remember when the Pirates of the Caribbean update came out of the blue. That was absolutely unbelievable because no one expected it, and it brought so many players in. And the game's player count was doing very, very well, and Sea of Thieves has expanded onto the PlayStation Store. It's on Steam, it's on Battle.net. The amount of platforms Sea of Thieves is now available on, the player count of Sea of Thieves is pretty ridiculous nowadays. I'm pretty sure it's hit about 30 million players, or something like that, which is nuts. It did peak at the start and then kind of went down, but recently it has absolutely gone up by crazy. I actually was incorrect. By April of 2024, it was on 40 million players, so you can only assume that it's probably about 45 million or so now, potentially, which is ludicrous considering what the game was like at the start. But not only have they brought in players, Fortnite brought in players, and the game did decrease in quality, the game has increased in quality over time consistently. There have been, as much as we do kind of give hate to the developers, they have consistently updated the game and they do listen to the feedback of the community. The Rare devs are involved in the Discord, the Reddit, the forums. They are very, very active in the community. They listen to what people have to say. They listen to the complaints people have. They look at the bug fixes. And in general, they're very good at fixing bugs. They're very, very good customer support when it comes to people accidentally buying things. They've created refunds. They're a really great community team. And I think they are an exemplary game developer when it comes to how you should treat your community. Obviously, in the last few years, as I said, it hasn't been as good, but still, they release developer updates, they release videos pretty much every week, outlining updates that they're releasing, they outline their game plan, they are very, very transparent about what they're doing and what they're adding to the game. And I honestly think What Rare have done in revitalizing this game is incredible. I've been playing for 7 years now, and whilst I will admit recently I have kind of fallen out of love with the game, which is why I don't post as much, I have been playing other games, the game always brings me back in. And if you have friends to play with, it's such a fun experience to just go on and mess about for a bit. That's all you really have to do. But there's so many ways to play now. There's so many new things to explore. If you're a new player, if you're an old player and you haven't played in a few years, there's so much to come back into. Honestly, you can, especially with Safer Seas, even if you hate PvP, there you go, you don't have to play it. If you love PvP, you go on Hourglass. There's stuff for everyone now. I think the game is honestly at a high point. Well, it was a high point a few years ago. The game now is still, I think, in a very, very good state, and I think they have set it up very well for the game to continue for a few more years. They said at the start they wanted to have a 10-year life cycle. I think it could exceed that. I think it could go for a lot longer than that, which I really hope it does because the game's amazing, and I kind of need to make YouTube videos for that long anyway, so hopefully they keep it on for a few years. But anyway, this has been a very long video talking about basically the history of Sea of Thieves, the updates, and the comeback of the game, because now, obviously, the player count has absolutely skyrocketed. And from the only few million players the game managed to keep for the first year or so, within a year after that, it got 10 million, and now obviously 40 million. The game has progressed exceptionally. Not only is it a commercial success, it's also a massive success with the fan base, and it has a very, very dedicated and now quite large, substantial community. I'm very, very proud of what Rare have done, to be honest. I'm very, very impressed as well with how the game's progressed. I'm really, really glad the game has continued to get better and better. It won a BAFTA in 2021 for Best Evolving Game, which I think is a deserved achievement, highlighting the progress of Rare. I also forgot to mention that it's really cool that Rare are doing proper collaborations with other groups now. So, I mean, obviously they had the collaboration with Disney when they released Pirates of the Caribbean Tour Tales. They released Monkey Island Tour Tales in collaboration with the game, obviously, Monkey Island. They've also collaborated, though, with games like Halo to release cosmetic sets. And I think that's really, really cool, just adding other game franchises into their own game. I think a final thing to note before I do list a couple of criticisms of the game is the fact that Rare have, for basically the last 7 years, been constantly focused on fixing updates and making the game run better with dedicated teams to basically every single aspect the game needs. I think the game has been an absolute beautiful success. I don't want to sound like a glazer of the game. There is obviously a lot of issues such as hit rates, which have been an issue for years. Obviously, there is still limited progression. There probably should be an increased progression, if we're being honest. And I am very upset they took away features such as the arena. I think overall, this game has had an exceptional life cycle so far and has truly been one of gaming's greatest comebacks. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this much longer form video, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.